My wife and I, when we set out to do this, we had two artifices in mind, two conceits. One was all happy endings, even though the last time you see Billy Grace's house is burning down, but we wanted to leave everybody feeling good. And so we stopped each of these stories at a moment where they were up. And the other artifice was no bad guys. So we didn't get into Bush and Browning and the National Guard and FEMA and all that. That's not what the book is about. But there is one genuine scandal, one piece of news in the book. And that is when Frank Minyard, who swam at 75 years old, swam 2 miles to his office, got stranded there for 5 days, finally gets to an abandoned schoolhouse 75 miles north of the city that has been set up as the morgue, as the disaster morgue, this abandoned schoolhouse. He gets there and the bodies are not there. And it turns out every day he hears another government agency, the Louisiana State Police or the 82nd Airborne, National Guard, are going to collect the bodies. And it turns out everybody was prevented from collecting the bodies until a private contract could be signed, because that was the administration we had. So the people, the dead of New Orleans, lay on the street for 5 days until a private contract could be signed. And here we are with Frank at the disaster mortuary at St. Gabriel.
If the water's over my head on Canal Street, what the hell is it like at the lake? The sky is eerily silent and empty. All the birds have been missing for days. What an idiot I was to swim up here. Now I'll have to swim out again. The coroner's office is flooded and shuttered, and nobody knows but the dead how it ends. Where are the bodies if my office is closed? Have they been tended to or just left to decompose? Where are the bodies? It's been nearly a week. Who but me speaks for those who can no longer speak? Where are the bodies? Where are the bodies?
We saved you a cot by the blackboard. Throw the coloring books on the floor. There's a garden hose for a shower. Let me show you the way to the morgue. Here's a phalanx of sub-zero semis where the units will be received. Decontaminated, fingerprinted, DNA'd and ID'd.
Where are the bodies? Not here it seems. You've given me stacks of facts, but not told me a thing. Where are the bodies? Where do we stand?
I'm with the 82nd Airborne, we are in command. We were ordered to collect the bodies, but our mission's officially dead. There's a risk of infection on further inspection, so the DOD has said. NOPD's in a shambles, and Louisiana State Police are overcome and far too numb to defend or preserve the deceased.
Where are the bodies, if not in this place? This is an utterly unconscionable disgrace. Where are the bodies? Where will they lie? Has red tape made it impossible to die? Where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? Where are the bodies?
morning of the flood, the morning the levees broke, a police officer named Tim Bruno, one of the 9, found a dead woman lying on the street. And he did not yet know that the levees had broken. All he knew was he had radioed in for the coroner to come. The coroner didn't show up. He radioed for an ambulance. The ambulance didn't show up. There has been a hurricane, but he hasn't been told that the levees have broken and everything is flooded. He picks the woman up, puts her in his car, drives her around all day, ultimately has to put her back on the street because there is no place to take her. And in the course of this day, Tim is a Texas, he's a white Texas kind of hard ass who has been a New Orleans cop for a while. He's got a very short temper, a very short fuse. He does not like poor people. He does not like black people. And he has this internal dialogue with this dead woman in the backseat.
Be serious, Tim. You can't bring a body into the precinct house. Do what that man at the hospital said and put that trash back on the street where you found it.
Well, Marie, it's you and me. Did that man call you trash? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Pretty girl dead at 23 from Jackson Avenue. She never had a goddamn chance with all the burned out whores and homes, the dealers, drunks, the pimps, and whoa. Kind of hippie thinking shit is that?
How was I supposed to break out of there? If I tried, what would people say? They call me uppity, cause if I can get out, why can't they? But I tell you what, I don't even know how it's done or even where I go. Maybe the man at the hospital's right. I'm trash, but what else could I be in this life?
Really need to get some sleep. Talking to myself, might need help. This is the land of the motherfucking free. You can be anything, at least that's the dream they sell. But faces loom behind my eyes, an endless stream of battered wives, a potpourri of prostitutes, the desperate, dead, and destitute. Yet you're back there making your excuse.
How was I supposed to break out of there? If I tried, what would people say? They call me uppity, cause if I can get out, why can't they? But I tell you what, I don't even know how it's done or even where I go. Maybe the man at the hospital's right. I'm trash, but what else could I be in this life?
Well, Marie, it's you and me.
To break out of there. If I tried, what would people
Pretty
say?
girl dead at
Call me
23.
uppity, cause if I can get out, why can't they?
I really need to get
I
some
don't
sleep.
even know how it's done or even where I go.
Really need to get some
I don't
sleep.
even know how it's done or even where I go.
Really need to get some
I don't
sleep.
even know how it's done, how it's done.
Well, Marie, it's you and me. Pretty girl dead at 23.
Cause if I can get up, why can't they?
Really need to get
I
some
don't
sleep.
even know how it's done, how it's done.
Well, Marie, it's you and me.
I don't even know.
This is the land of the motherfucking free.
There are 109 musicians on this record. Everybody is on this record, and it's amazing. And I think all of them are in this, which is the finale, including Mayor Mitch Landry, who used to aspire to a theatrical career, and now he's got it. So this is Rebuild Renew. And there's a little rap in here that on the record is done by...
Shamar Allen's 10-year-old son, so when it comes up, you'll have to imagine me as a 10-year-old son. My wife will have no trouble with that. And before we do the last song, I'd like to thank the fellow who read Dan's book and insisted that I read it for a whole year before I did, because like Dan, I didn't want to have a Katrina book experience either. And I found out that it wasn't, that it was the 40 years of my life between Betsy and Katrina. It was my adult consciousness. I had lost my home and my stuff after the flood, but more than that, I'd lost all the touchstones of my youth. And through Dan's book and his words and these characters, I got to recapture that with song, thanks to my friend Colman DeKay. It was his idea.
Storm's over. You gotta shake a leg up there. Buy yourself a ticket back home from I don't know where. Whether you take the bus or whether you take the train, pick yourself up, get your ass on solid ground again. Rebuild, renew, that's what people do. Yeah, rebuild, renew, that's what we do. Well, it's always been messed up here, but it's always been my home. Till you've been stuck someplace else, man, you don't really know. Come on down next Mardi Gras if you wanna feed 9 days. And every other city in America is just another devious Tuesday. Rebuild, renew, that's what people do. That's what people do. Rebuild, renew, that's what we do. Faces tired and eyes are fire, music lifts our hearts. The good time of a second line fills the street, moves our feet, wills us to restart. Yeah, yeah.
Man, oh man, I love this place. When the hurricane hit, you should have saw my face. Moved me to Houston cause it flooded my block. I gotta get back home cause New Orleans rocks. Mardi Gras, second line, and the good old Saints. I rebuilt my own home, where's the pain? In New Orleans, downtown CTC, there's a lot of other people that feel like me. Come on!
Rebuild, renew, that's what people do. That's what people do. Rebuild, renew, that's what we do. I had to reinvent myself, remake and redo, baby. I can rebuild me, darling, so can you. 212, 213, it's all about 504 to me. Yeah, you're right. Oh, we rebuild, we renew, that we do. We rebuild, renew, that's what I did, baby.
Everybody, we all know it's true. We still got a lot of work to do. Help me, yeah, I'll help you. Together we can rebuild and renew.
Everything I see, feel, and I do tells me rebuild and renew. Rebuild and renew. Block by block, street by street, house by house.
That's what
We're
people do.
doing that.
One team, one fight, one voice, one city. We love New Orleans now, ain't she pretty? Rebuild and rebuild.
What we do.
So now we'd like to bring Colman up to the stage here with us. And we're going to open it up to questions from you all, and feel free to ask anybody about any aspect of the process, and you know, we'll answer to the best of our ability. We'll just wait for the folks to get out there. And if you could actually just wait until the microphone gets to you, so so we can hear you, and we'll answer.
Hey guys, how are you? My question involves the future of the process, I guess. Reading on Playbill that the goal is to bring things back to the theater community into New Orleans. I'm curious as to what theater scene we're talking about, more of the professional scene there, or on a much wider level, etc. Great job, by the way. It sounds wonderful.
We're developing the book right now, the book for the musical, and whoever comes on board as a director is going to be required to spend a good amount of time in New Orleans, just sort of soaking up those juices. And I imagine that we'll workshop it there, and then hopefully bring it back to your town.
Yeah, that's something that was apparent really from the very beginning. The really terrific thing about the way the project has developed so far is it's been such an organic and sincere and genuine process that has had big dreams from the beginning and small expectations, which is kind of also the definition of New Orleans in a lot of ways, for a lot of reasons. But I think we all recognized early on that it's vitally important that it grow from New Orleans, that it start there. You know, New Orleans is the world's city too, so we feel a responsibility and a desire to get it to as wide an audience as possible. But I think we all feel pretty strongly that we don't want to compromise too much on the integrity of the place and the people. And also, I felt a real obligation from my time down there to make sure that I was always trying to leave more there than I took with me, and I have taken so much with me, just emotionally and every other way, that I feel like I have a lot to give back still. So personally, you know, I felt really importantly that it has to begin in the communities down there. It needs to. I think it's a wonderful thing to get as many New York people and New Orleans people working together and get a highway sort of developed between our cities and ultimately around the country too. But I think we are pretty certain that we want to make sure the early developmental stage spends at least some time in New Orleans, involves New Orleans artists, and whether there aren't a lot of structures in place right now in New Orleans in the theater community. You know, the major roadhouses were flooded. The Sanger's supposed to come back this year or next year? This year, which will be a wonderful thing for the city. We don't, at this point, know exactly what the venue is going to be for it and what the process is going to be. That's partly going to be driven by what the show itself turns out to be. So it's all open and a big open question, which is kind of the most exciting place to be right now. Sure.
How many individuals that are depicted in the book whose songs have been written and lyrics established have heard the music and lyrics, and have you had any reactions from them?
Well, actually, we had a listening party, and so Wilbur and his wife Belinda came to that. Ronald Lewis came, and he actually is a friend of the fellow who wrote the rap song about him as a young trumpet player named Shamar Allen. And Shamar grew up around the corner from Ronald before the flood, so he actually calls him Uncle Ronald. So they met, and then Tim Bruno, the police officer, actually heard his song "You and Me" recently and liked it. And we were concerned because he is probably the least flattering character in the book. But he is aware of who he is, and my wife's father was a police officer in New Orleans for 30 years. My grandfather was a police officer in New Orleans. it is a job with brutal realities, and they are brutal men who do the job. And I told him that Colman and I had been honest and brutal in the lyrics and the songs, and that the singer who performed them, Alex McMurray, did so with great intensity, but also with great humanity.
And what Paul neglected to mention is that the listening party was at Joanne's pub.
Well, the main character that I heard was Joanne came to the studio when Michael recorded the disco track, Full-Time Joanne, and she gave a listen to all the songs we'd written, and the song Joanne, that was during the storm, her hero song, her girlfriend was there and she was crying, and Colman looked at Joanne and said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, she's the emotional one."
Even from the first chord, she hadn't even heard any lyrics yet, and she was already sobbing. And she would look up at Joanne like, and then back to sobbing. Really lovely.
Somebody else?
Hey, Paul.
Hey,
With something as big as Katrina was, media-wise, and all the coverage and all the video and all the sort of iconographic images that came out of it, how do you or do you not incorporate that into this to give sort of a uniqueness to it?
Primarily, you should remember that the story is not about Katrina.
Right.
It's a 40-year history between, but the way Michael plans on staging the play is, you want to talk as digital film, to do some of the backdrops.
Well, we're going to do a concert down in New Orleans on May 4th at La Petite Theater, and for that version we're thinking that it's really going to be more of a concert than the play. So in order to kind of facilitate the storytelling without really kind of interrupting the flow of the music, we're going to do it with projections and either video or video stills perhaps, or I don't know when we get to the actual production. That's one opportunity, one way to go, but it'll be determined a lot by just what the workshop process develops and who we have working with us as director and who the producing entities are and everything else. And it's kind of a fun point to be at right now, to think it could be something traditional that we're used to seeing, like something like In the Heights, for example, that sort of dealt with the neighborhood in a more traditional way, or it could be something very sparse and metaphoric, and let the music do the storytelling as it does so brilliantly. So we'll just kind of see.
I have this one image of Katrina that a friend of mine experienced that has become so set in my mind that I think that this could be the one. He was walking down Carrollton Avenue the day after the storm, and feeling like everybody else that they dodged a bullet, and all of a sudden he hears this explosion, and he looks, and up off in the distance there's a manhole cover jetting into the air on a jet of water. And then 2 seconds later, another one 20 yards closer explodes and jets up, and then they're coming towards him, exploding into the air. And at that moment, he realized that the levees had broken. And it's just such a vivid image that it needs to be somewhere.
And so we're talking to people about how to blow manhole covers. Exactly. Well, Spider-Man has led the way in a lot of
The song, Where Are the Bodies, reminded me of this. At the end of the book, we learned that Frank has a dream of setting up a memorial park and cemetery for the bodies that weren't collected or were not, nobody came to claim them. Was that dream realized?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, beautiful. It's right at the end. It's
where
down at the
is
foot
it?
of Canal Street with all the other cemeteries, and it's beautiful.
What?
It was. They opened it the day of Gustav.
A fellow from New Orleans up front said, one of the associate producers, Victor Planche, remember that they opened that memorial actually the day Hurricane Gustav came to the Gulf Coast, so ironic.
I'm just curious what this thread thing is.
To explain Threadheads and Threadhead Records and Threadhead Foundation and Mystery Street Records as well. There's a group of music fans, New Orleans music fans, specifically from around the world, and they've been going to New Orleans for years, and they met on the Jazz Fest chat forum, hence the name Threadheads. And prior to the flood, they were just fans of music who had just wanted to meet up with other fans of music. They didn't know each other, none of them were in the music business, and it was meet me at the Congo stage for 3 o'clock for Trombone Shorty, or let's have a beer at 11 o'clock at this beer booth. And they got to be friends, and then after the flood, one of them posted on the thread that they couldn't just go back for a party anymore. They had to do something to help the music they loved so much. So the baby had what they called a pottery, because they were drunk when they came up with the name. And the first year after the flood, Kermit Ruffins played it, and they raised $5,000, which they donated to the Musicians Clinic in New Orleans. The second year after the flood, I played it along with Kermit and Big Sam's Funky Nation, my friend John Boutte, who sings the theme song for the show Treme. He and I did an acoustic set, and this gentleman from California walked up to me after the set and said, "That was really wonderful, you guys should make a record together." And I said, "Man, we can't make rent, let alone make a record." And he asked how much we would need to do it, and I told him, and he said, "Okay, I'll get back to you." And I thought, "Yeah, sure." And then 2 weeks later, my phone rang, and he said, "Okay, I have the money, where do I send it?" And I was stunned, because I've been in the record business for 25 years, and he never asked me to let him hear the music. He never asked me to sign anything. He didn't want ownership of the music. He wanted a handshake, and my word as a gentleman, that when the record came out, I would pay back the people that donated the money, because some of them had the money to offer, but some of them had been out of work for over a year and only gave $5 just because they wanted to be part of the thing. So I made the record with them, and they felt great. They felt what we all felt after the flood when we felt so powerless. They felt empowered, and they felt empowered in a really personal and intimate way through music, the music they love so much. So they came to me and they said, "We want you to make another one." And I said, "I'm a little tired." And they asked who else they could help, and there's a wonderful band called the New Orleans Nightcrawlers, and just so happens their lead trombonist had an organization called the Arabic Wrecking Crew that volunteers all around the country came to New Orleans and helped him gut the homes of musicians who didn't have the money to get it done themselves or who were too emotionally frozen to do so. I happen to have been one of those musicians. They gutted my home. And when they asked me who else they could help, I thought of Craig Klein immediately and the R&B Wrecking Crew, and the Nightcrawlers got help from the Threadheads, and they didn't want to stop. So in the last 4 years, the Threadheads from around the world have donated over $250,000 to make 23 new releases, and as of Jazz Fest this year, will be 33 new releases. They've also donated over $250,000 to the New Orleans Musicians Clinic. They have an organization called Fest for Kids that donates instruments to young children who can't afford them, and pays musicians to teach them the traditions of brass band music, and then buys them a ticket to see Jazz Fest so they can experience the culture. They also have the Threadhead Foundation, which took a couple of years to get because they had to apply to the government for the proper papers, but they give out grants to artists and musicians to do records, and those don't have to be paid back because they're not coming out of people's actual pockets. So their impact on the city has been vast. And John Swenson, who writes for Rolling Stone and Spin and Stereophile, has said that they have changed the face of New Orleans music for decades to come, and I believe that, and I'm so proud to be associated with them. Chris Joseph, who runs Threadhead Records, Threadhead Foundation,
Another question? Questions for Dan or about the book? Or?
When I first heard about this project, I'm a journalist, so immediately latched on, and as I was pitching the story of this project going, one editor of a very major paper responded, "We've OD'd on stories about Katrina, and we've OD'd on stories about New Orleans, not Katrina, but the city." How much is that still going to be a problem and maybe a potential something to navigate for a musical like this?
Michael could answer that part better, but as a musician I can tell you that it's not a news story. You know, it's a music, and that's what New Orleans is known for around the world. I've played in France, I've played in Italy, I've lived in New York in the 80s, and my entree before I opened my mouth to sing or played a song for anyone was, "I'm from New Orleans." And faces light up the world over when you say that, and when you attach it to music or food. So I think that most people are interested once you say that it's about one of those two things. And we don't have any food to bring on stage, but Michael's got some special effects in mind. I don't know how. As a play, I don't know how New York's going to deal with the New Orleans.
Well, I mean, you know, who knows? I think trying to predict how Broadway is going to react to anything is you know, a fool's game. Not that we're not fools, but I think when I read the book, before I'd even begun to think about it being a theater piece, I just was riveted by the stories of these people, and it's the same feeling that I had when I went to the city. I'm sure those of you who have visited, can attest to this. It's a place like nowhere in the world. But the people that you meet and the stories that you hear. I've had a friend actually who said the difficulty in getting people to go to the theater in New Orleans is, why should they pay $20 and go sit someplace when they can just sit on the porch and hear their neighbor tell stories? And they get food. So maybe the essential thing is to serve food and alcohol. But I think just as you heard with the way the threadheads kind of have thought outside the box and found new ways to support music and to support musicians. I think we're facing a totally blank page about how to go about this. We can make it whatever we want it to be, and I truly do believe that if you make something meaningful, that people will find it. I think my experience, I mean, even in just putting this evening together, and the idea was we were going to come up and have some meetings with people in New York and try to sort of see if we could get a little toe in the door with some people who might be able to help us create this piece. And along the way, Chris called and said that Dan and Paul were thinking, it would be fun if we sort of did a little evening maybe while we're there and just, read a little bit from the book or talk about things and do some songs. And so I started calling around and I called Symphony Space because I had a relationship with them, and the number of people who have answered immediately, and the places where just the fact that actually there was a press release about the album going out that just happened to have the names of some of the more theatrical based people, myself, Wendell Pierce, people that people kind of recognized, and suddenly it was, without having even been sent directly to the press offices of Broadway websites and those kinds of things, it was suddenly picked up on, because when you say New Orleans and when you sort of let people know that something new is happening, it starts to gain momentum of its own. So while we're not going to count on that happening, it is a little bit of an indication that if you go at it the right way and if your heart is pure, not that any of our hearts are pure, I know that we stand a good chance of making something meaningful, and I think theater and Broadway theater is starved for something meaningful and human, and it has never heard music like this on Broadway, and those are three big things going for it. As far as people being tired of Katrina stories, as Paul said, it's not a Katrina story. Actually, I really like the way Paul describes, the pitch is sort of one line sort of description. If you want to share that about the city being the real character.
It is. People have asked us who the central character is when you're dealing with 4 decades and 9 people's lives and they never intersect. And the central character is the city. And when I look back at the 40 years of my life, writing the book and living Dan's characters, I did at the time, but when I look back and I listen to the songs, I am Belinda, the little girl who wanted out of New Orleans at all costs. And I am Wilbur, the guy who wanted music to be his escape to a better life. And I am Frank, the poor kid from the Irish Channel whose mom would say things that would embarrass him, like she did in that opening song. And the main character of this story isn't Katrina. The main character of the story in one line is the city of New Orleans. 40 years in the life of this beautiful character named New Orleans.
Just wait for that next second.
not this quickly. Our original hope was that a $5,000 grant from the Threadheads, and maybe we could get a cabaret record done with a piano player, bass player, and a few singers. So no, it wouldn't. The record would not have the scope that it has, for sure. And not only was it the $50,000 grant, but Chris went on to raise a lot more money because we went over budget. Because once we got the fever of including as many musicians as we could, that became as vital as capturing songs. Because for me and for a lot of people, what got wiped out after the flood was not just the things; it was a sense of community. And I remember asking people all over the country, "Where's that going to come from?" And it's there again. The grant was a big deal in that. Definitely wouldn't be, and certainly without Michael. I mean, we had the record, and Colman and I had this dream of getting to New York, but it was quite an accident that Michael ventured into our lives, and he's really the reason that we're sitting here tonight, much more so than the grant.
More questions?
Just from a technical side, because that's kind of where my head's at. I was lucky enough to visit you guys one day in the studio. I read about where Mark replayed the entire mix, Mark Bingham, into the studio for the final recording. Is that what lends that much more aliveness to the songs?
Mark had a real good sense of the piece as a concept. He's a brilliant engineer, producer, and has made a lot of records in his career. And he watched it all happen and got his mind around it in the 2 months we were in the studio. And in his mind, between punk rock and brass band and traditional jazz, there had to be a sonic thread. And that thread was this experience, sitting in a room where the music came. So he took the instruments and the voices, put them into speakers, pumped them into the big studio room, and recorded that sound. Then he moved the mics around to record them from above, below, from corners of the room. And then he pumped all those different sounds back in, so that if you're sitting in the speakers, in the heart of the speakers, you're getting that theater experience along with the record. The music is as authentic as it can be, but it's still, the voices are placed on top of it, and the sound feels like that. It's really him. He was quite wonderful with that.
Anybody else? Well, I just want to say that this is the first time that these songs have been played outside of New Orleans, isn't it?
Yes.
So it really means a lot to us that, first of all, that there are this many people who either just don't care about the Oscars, or congratulations on your purchase of a new DVR. But it really means a lot to us to get to come up here and share the very beginnings of this whole experience. And if it continues to be this kind of thing, where it's just people who care and are curious and want to listen and open their hearts and hear these stories, then it's already a success. So thank you all for coming, and thank you so much to Symphony Space for giving us this time.
Thank you to everyone on stage, and I just want to say to all of you out there, please see as you leave that there are books being sold and CDs, and all of the artists will be signing them on stage. So I hope you'll buy a book and a CD and come back in and get it signed. Thanks.